All right, controlling your spine is one of the most important things that anyone across the board can possibly learn to do. Whether you are an average human being who just kind of goes through the day-to-day life, a frequent gym goer, or more of an athlete like a power lifter, CrossFitter, Olympic lifter, what have you, and even into football, basketball, etc., being able to control your spine plays a huge role in how you move and how your body feels with that movement. So, learning how to flex and extend your spine, even segment by segment, as well as a whole, that global flexion and extension, is going to be huge, okay? Especially when you're lifting, we're going to have to move into extension and flexion with control and intent. Okay, so we're going to get down into that prone position again, hands and knees. All right, and this is a cat-cow, cat-camel, used a lot in yoga, but we're going to segment things and move it much slower than they typically do, okay? And so what we are going to do is we're going to start by flexing our spine, pulling everything into a rounded position. And then we're going to do 5 reps moving from the hips and 5 reps moving from the neck. So the hip moves first, just the hips. Lower back, lower back, lower back, mid back, mid back, mid back. Slowly moving into that upper back. Continuing to slowly extend, chin tuck as long as you possibly can. And then finally, look up. Again, we're moving from the hips before we switch and move from the neck. So hips tuck under, under. Okay, lower back, moving into the mid back, still looking up. All right, into the upper back, and then tucking the chin down. So you'll do 5 reps. That's 1, moving from the hips up to the head, from flexion into extension, and from the hips up into the head, from extension into flexion. 1 rep. You do that 5 times. Then we reverse and we move from the neck. So again, we move into flexion, right? Everything's tucked. From here, we're going to look up. We're going to try and keep our lower back rounded, keep our abs squeezed as we start to extend our neck and upper spine. As we do that, we're moving into the mid back. You'll notice my hips keep moving. I don't want my hips to move. I want to keep them underneath me, like so. Continue to look up, and then slowly move into extension. And then again, we're going to move into flexion from this extended position, but we're going to tuck our neck first. We're moving from the neck tucks down, upper back, mid back, slowly moving into that lower back and the hips. Okay, this is one of the most difficult movements because typically people move their spine in chunks, okay? Neck, upper back, lower back, and sometimes people have some movement through the mid back. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but we want to be able to segment those things and be able to move through each vertebrae individually, each segment as a whole, and then the spine as a whole, working through that flexion and rounded out spine, really long, and extension, that bowed spine, arched back, okay? So 5 repetitions, moving from the hips to the head, and 5 repetitions of both of those, starting with movement from the hips up into the spine and back, and then movements from the neck down into the hips and back. All right, take that slow, make it intentional. If you find areas where you really struggle, and when I mean struggle, you're either going to feel restrictions or you're going to feel like your body wants to move in areas that it typically shouldn't. And you'll notice there were a couple places for me that did that, where I was moving through my upper and mid back, but my hips started to move, my lower back started to move, and that's a sign that that's typically a position that I compensate in, and any compensations are things that we really need to work on, because those are areas where we're going to bleed force, which means that we aren't going to be as strong as we possibly could. And anytime we bleed force, anytime we compensate, we typically will raise the risk of injury to a greater degree than we otherwise would. So we're not preventing injury in the sense that you're never going to get injured, but we're reducing that likelihood greatly by removing some of those compensations and learning how to move our body in controlled segments with intentional movement at each and every joint.